Well, the Queensland election is 1 week. This Saturday, we'll be following for you some interesting developments. The result may well reflect a national mood. South Brisbane is Jackie Tradd's seat. She's seen as a divisive figure. She seems to have spent an inordinate amount of time before the Crime and Misconduct Commission, but she survived. She has a very important political attribute. She's feared by her opponents. She's tough and she knows how to fight. And it appears as though she's inspired division even amongst her most serious rival, namely the opposition LNP. The LNP are recommending that the Greens be preferenced ahead of Labor's Jackie Tradd in the seat of South Brisbane. But as the former Labor Lord Mayor Jim Sooley has said, the Greens candidate is a so-called climate scientist and an activist. And Jim Sooley has said that voters don't want to be handing Extinction Rebellion the balance of power in the Queensland Parliament. Well, I've known Sallyanne Atkinson since forever. She was an outstanding Lord Mayor of Brisbane from 1985 to 1991, the only woman to have held the position. She was succeeded by Jim Sooley. She's widely experienced. She's been our Senior Trade Commissioner to France. She was our representative to the International Chamber of Commerce. She was a representative of the Australian Olympic Committee and part of the successful bid for the Sydney 2000 Olympics. In fact, she was Deputy Mayor of the Olympic Village at the Sydney Olympics. She's got honorary doctorates from Griffith University and the University of Queensland. She has said she would never preference the Greens ahead of Labor. She has described the Greens as very, very dangerous. I agree. Dr. Sallyanne Atkinson joins us. Sallyanne, good evening. Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure to be with you, Alan. It is indeed.
The Liberals are supposed to believe in freedom of choice, though I must say in the last 6 months many of those freedoms have been taken away. But in spite of the LNP how to vote card, you will be putting the Greens last.
Well, I think this is one of the great things about being a Liberal or being LNP is that there is a freedom of choice. I don't tell people how they should vote. I'm happy to tell them how I'm going to vote. I'm obviously going to vote LNP for Clem Green, our candidate, but I think the Greens are very, very dangerous. And the reason I say that is because they're not properly green. They don't seem to care about the environment, or they do, but where you see them being active and activating is on other issues, and quite often issues that they haven't talked about before.
Absolutely. I must say that's probably the first time you and Jim Sooley have agreed on anything.
Well, probably you'd find us Lord Mayors of this great city, or Lord's Mayor, I think.
Lord's Mayor, yes.
Lord's Mayor, I think we probably agree on quite a lot, but politically we've always been at different ends of the spectrum, if you like.
Do you think, Sallyanne, there'll be a leakage of preferences from LNP voters in spite of the how to vote card because they, like you, can't stomach the Greens?
Well, I don't know. I have seen a lot of LNP voters in previous elections, a lot of, trendy inner city people who are my friends, people who live near me, who think that being green is sort of very avant-garde and forward-thinking and the way to go. But I think in recent times with our local councillor who's up there leading the charges, protesting against the refugees without ever telling us what he would do. I mean, I feel enormous sympathy, as do most right-thinking people, enormous sympathy for refugees, and I'd like to see some solution. But yes, I don't think holding up the traffic in Kangaroo Point is any kind of solution at all.
Good on you, Sally. See, as a former Queenslander the borders are closed, I can't get there often, but in this seat of Maiwar, for example, and our viewers should know this, I mean, these are reasonably affluent areas. Barden, Fig Tree Pocket, Auchenflower, Toowong, Indooroopilly, St Lucia, they hold this seat in the state parliament. I find it amazing. And then if you take this seat of McConnell, which is almost slap bang in the middle of the city, Kelvin Grove, the Valley, Spring Hill, New Farm, Tenerife, I mean, you live in the South Brisbane electorate. I find some of these political developments astonishing.
Well, astonishing. Maiwar, though, I mentioned before that sort of avant-garde Liberal voters who think they're sort of forward-thinking and trendy, and many of them, because Maiwar actually was my first ever ward in the Brisbane City Council. It was the ward of Indooroopilly, so I know lots of those people. Nobody I know has actually voted for them, and we've got a very good candidate out there this time, and I hope that's the end of this little rush to the Greens. But one of the most fascinating things about this election, Alan, is that 3/4 of the electorate will have voted before election day. Not me. I like to get down there in the hustle and the bustle, and I wish there were sausages and cakes from the local school. But over 70% already have asked or done their voting, gone to the pre-poll, and by election day, I'm not quite sure who's going to be left to actually come down to the polling booths.
Great to talk to you, Sallyanne. Great to talk to you. Great believer. She's a wonderful lady. This in democracy where people can make up their own mind. She's not telling people what to do.
And Alan, can I make one? I was desperate to get into that conversation you were having about education. Nobody seems to mention history. Yes. History is so important. Right. If we don't learn the lessons of history, we can't manage the future. So our kids need to be taught history, not just Australian history, but world history, so they can see what's happened in the world previously.
Wonderful, Sallyanne. Lovely to talk to you. Catch up soon. There she is, Dr. Sallyanne Atkinson, discussing this critical South Brisbane seat held by Jackie Trad. She'll be preferencing Jackie Trad ahead of the Greens.